Well, time to look at NATO counters, or to be more exact, what I call the Niehorster dialect. For those who don't know, Dr. Leo Niehorster did a lot of research on unit organizations, specifically the German army in World War II. And best of it all, a lot of information is free available on his homepage. Now, why doesn't he use the full NATO standard? Well, because NATO didn't account for certain unit types that were common in World War II. Hence, there are some slight differences. I prefer the Niehorster dialect because it encompasses nearly all World War II unit types and is also well documented and updated regularly. Note that these symbols are mainly NATO inspired, but there are few but significant differences. For instance, infantry looks the same, but marine infantry looks quite different. Niehorster uses an anchor, which looks awesome, whereas NATO uses waves, which makes the counter look like a hippie infantry. While in defense of NATO, maybe the term Joint Chief of Staff confused some people in the design department, but I don't know. Anyway, every symbol consists of two basic areas, the type and the size indicators. I will start with the basic types, then expand a bit on them, and finally give some information about the size indicator. So let's get started with the infantry, a big X. Why? That is simple, those should represent the two bandoliers of Napoleonic infantry. In general, these symbols make sense in one way or another, and once you know the background or know a hint, they are quite easy to remember. Next up is artillery, one big black dot. For me, that symbol is one of the most obvious ones, and a simple way to remember is that artillery tends to make a lot of holes in the ground. Although World of Tanks players have a different view, they will agree on the hole part, but might indicate that the hole is not really located in the ground, more a bit above it. Now next up is the cavalry, which is a black triangle that makes up the lower right. Now probably one of the best ways to remember this symbol is that cavalry is made half man and half beast. Now there's a very similar symbol for recon troops, simply because to a large degree they originated or had quite many cavalry units in them. For instance, an early World War II German infantry division often contained a substantial number of cavalry units in the recon battalion. And finally, for the last basic unit, the tank, which looks like this. Now I don't know how to call the geometric object, but it clearly resembles the tracks of a tank, so it's probably the most obvious symbol out there. Now comes the fun part, combining the basic unit types. Now let's take a tank symbol and combine it with the infantry, and I think it looks great. This is now an armored infantry or mechanized infantry unit. If we combine an infantry with an artillery unit, we get an infantry gun or infantry support gun unit, which is a specialized artillery weapon and usually used as a direct fire weapon, unlike regular artillery that is usually used in indirect fire. Additionally, the infantry guns are usually part of the infantry units and not the artillery units. Now if we combine artillery with a tank, we get self-propelled artillery. Now if you guess this should be an assault gun, I can blame you, but an assault gun unit looks a bit different. Just one more line, but since an assault gun usually has less firepower and has a lower firing angle, imagine the line limiting the power of the artillery and it makes more sense. Now the difference between self-propelled artillery and assault guns is that the latter put a stronger emphasis on armor protection and they're usually well armored and enclosed, whereas self-propelled artillery is usually weakly armored and not enclosed. They're also used differently. Assault guns operate directly on the front in direct fire missions, whereas self-propelled artillery operates behind the lines in indirect fire missions. Next up, let's combine a recon unit with a tank. Now we get an armored recon unit. Well, I think you got now the basics how the combinations work. So let's look at some more advanced unit types. Let's start with the anti-tank gun. If you look at the unit, the dot clearly indicates the gun, whereas the two lines can be seen either as a firing arc or as an arrow that is directed to the ground, which makes a little bit more sense if we look at the next unit, which is the anti-aircraft unit, because in this case the arrow is directed to the top. Additionally, instead of a dot, it has a short horizontal line, which can be seen as a horizon. Next up, an engineer unit, which has a E turned by 90 degrees, which can be interpreted as a bridge or just a drunken engineer worshipping the porcelain god. As usual, it is your call which hint you take. Next is the signal unit, which is quite simple. It is represented by a simplified flash symbol. And finally, a very similar unit, the maintenance unit, which is represented by a simple wrench. Again, you can combine all these units. For instance, a maintenance unit combined with a tank symbol gives an armored maintenance or tank recovery unit, which would be a unit with recovery tanks like the Bergetiger or the M32 German-based recovery tank. Since we got the more advanced unit, let's add one layer to this, the unit modifiers. If you add a black bar at the top, this means we have a headquarters unit. For instance, this unit would be an artillery headquarters battery. Now here we have a transport unit. When we add the previous bar at the bottom, this indicates a supply, service or quartermaster's unit. Pretty simple hint here, the headquarters is at the top and the supply provides the foundation for any operation. The next modifier is important for especially tank units. A single vertical line on the left indicates a medium modifier. And in this case we have a medium tank company. Whereas a heavy tank company would look like this. It is a vertical bar instead of just a line. Now since we covered the most important tank modifiers, time for the various infantry modifiers. A small triangle to the middle of the rectangle indicates a mountain unit. In this instance, a mountain infantry regiment. If you use simplified wings, then you get an airborne regiment. And if you add an anchor, you guessed it, it's a marine unit. And if you add two circles at the bottom, these indicate motorized units, in this case a motorized regiment. Now finally, the indicator at the top indicates the size of the unit. If there's no indicator there, it means the unit is of undetermined size. If it is just one dot, it is a team or fire team. 2 dots mean a squad or section, 3 dots a platoon or detachment, whereas one vertical line is a company, or if it's an artillery unit, it's called a battery. 2 lines mean a battalion, 3 lines a regiment. The next up is a brigade, which has 1 X, 2 X are a division, and 3 X a corps. 4 X an army, 5 X an army group, or in case of the Russians, a front. Note that although there's a clear hierarchy, this is a very theoretical depiction. Depending on the time period, unit type and also country, certain unit sizes may be omitted. For instance, some infantry division layouts don't use brigades. Also some nations, especially those who like to drink tea, have a tendency to use the name brigade for battalion-sized units. Because apparently living on an island is clearly not eccentric enough. Where others, and I don't will name any names here, have the tendency to get annoyed when somebody doesn't follow the rules. Which I can understand, because everything needs to be correct and in order. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share and subscribe. And see you next time.